Hello, welcome to the show. Welcome back, actually. Welcome back after our 2-week break. Apologies about that, but even if we've been here in the previous 2 weeks, I doubt very much whether you would have been there. We've got a break, actually, from World Cup football at the moment. Nothing at all is taking place tonight. No excuses for not watching this show, but it has been riveting, and I don't know whether my guest tonight is like me, already suffering withdrawal symptoms. Travis Binnion, the manager of Sheffield United's academy. It's just been electric, hasn't it? To switch off the current like that just makes you kind of sag a bit, doesn't it?
It's been a fantastic World Cup, hasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, the quality and the goals and the drama, it's been the best one I can remember thus far, and obviously it helps with us still being in the competition as well.
Indeed, I'm a couple of years older than you, and it's the best one I can remember equally. 66. I'm just privileged to have been old enough to remember that.
Yeah. I didn't want to ask you if you were there for that. But.
I do remember that, and obviously, you know, you can't really top. Well, you never know. This might top it. We get the desired result, but I don't think any other tournament has had not just the quality of football and the spectacular goals, but the surprises element.
Yeah, and it's really at a point now where, there's every chance that Brazil might win it, but you look at it and you go, any one of possibly 8 teams, even with Russia hosting it, you don't quite know how that's going to pan out. And I think every nation still in it will genuinely feel they've got a chance of winning it. And how often can you say that?
Including us. How often can you say that?
Not very often at all. I think we always think, or the media builds it up, that we've got a chance and we've got this, and it's just been nice this time around where the players probably haven't been under that pressure, and I mean, only the guys in the camp will know that, but they seem to be enjoying it, and they seem not to be burdened with the heavy weight of expectation that usually comes with an England World Cup or Euros.
And all the baggage that they're not carrying them, these kids, but Gareth Southgate's got them in such a positive frame of mind. And he hasn't done things like, say, come off social media and live like hermits or whatever. He's just let them live.
It seems quite a relaxed camp, and for an England camp to be relaxed after all the trials and tribulations and ultimately failures. It's really refreshing, and he needs to take a hell of a lot of credit for it, and hopefully it continues another couple of weeks yet.
England players aren't supposed to enjoy the World Cup, but they are, and we're all enjoying it. We're all in a fever pitch of excitement at the moment. Of course, one of the reasons you're sitting here is the pride that the World Cup is bringing to Sheffield United and your academy via a couple of players that are starring for England at the moment. Harry Maguire and Kyle Walker, as we know, came through the system at Shirecliffe. And just tell us about your pride, the club's pride at the moment.
It's an immense source of pride. I mean, I know Chris has talked about it in the media in the last week, and it's just brilliant to see 2 people that you know, that you've been in contact with at different ages, and just to see them play on that stage and play big parts. And it's just, it really strikes home to the kids in the system, kids across the area, that what's possible, and it's a source of inspiration for the kids in our system, because I don't think Harry and Kyle in their wildest dreams would have thought at 10 or 14 or 18 that they'd be doing what they're doing now, and it just shows it is possible if you work hard, if you listen, if you take the opportunities when they come, then look what's there for you.
Fantastic advert for your academy as well. In terms of enticing kids to come there, kids that you think have got a future, and attracting them there. You know, how valuable is it to have flagships like these 2 players?
Well, it's definitely of great value, but we've got a long tradition of producing players right back to John Warnock's time, Ron Reid, your Jagielkas of this world, right through to arguably the latest one, obviously, is Brooksy. So there's not far off 20 years there of a success, and with youth development, you don't have a great year every year. It's almost impossible, but if you do the right things for long enough and and you keep learning, and you build up that sort of place within the club where there's an expectation that you produce players and there's an expectation from the fans, and you're an important part of the business, then you will have success, because we've got good people, and we've had good people for a long time now.
How important is that? You talk about good people, and managers often, sometimes quite glibly, talk about, I want good characters. And one manager years ago, who's a very successful manager, said to me, well, look, Al, he said, I'd have Jack the Ripper in my team as long as he could play.
Yeah.
That was a sort of private attitude that I couldn't attribute that quote to him.
Yeah.
But he was one of many that were probably, and they're still out there today.
Yeah.
And for instance, Neymar, anything goes, I don't care about the diving, he's a great footballer, etc.
Yeah.
So, do you genuinely, I know it's not a glib line at Sheffield United, but how important is this? I know it's important to the first team manager, Chris Wilder, within that dressing room.
Yeah.
And that runs from the chairman
through Chris into obviously my department, but we work with a mantra of better people, better players. Every kid in every system's got talent. That's why they're there in the first place. But as we all know, to have a long and distinguished career, it's about a lot more than talent. It's about attitude, mindset, resilience, retaining that hunger to want to get out of bed and be better today than you were yesterday. And that's the type of people that we want, and that's the environment that we have got and need to continue to harness, really.
We'll talk specifically about Harry Maguire and your part in his development, and Carl Walker in a minute. But we've all seen players, sometimes of repute, go to clubs on loan, and the club that's loaned them find out that actually is a right so-and-so. You know, I wouldn't use those words normally, but you know what I mean. Yeah. And he's booted out, and he goes back to his club.
Yeah.
So you're trying to, presumably, your kids, because you're trying to give them a pathway to the Sheffield United first team, but part of that is getting them out on loan. So are you confident, and is that important that when they do go out on loan, they're good people as well?
Yeah, for us it's just as important, because it's our reputation. I mean, you only have to listen to Chris, and he talks about having good characters and the teams before any individual. And for us, it's huge, because if a kid goes out and gets sent back, or a kid goes out and gets caught doing the wrong things, then he damages everyone's reputation. But the next kid that we need to place somewhere, it then becomes a lot harder. And one thing we pride ourselves on is having the right type of people, and you can never quite gauge how a kid's gonna do. Like, you place a kid at a level, you go, I think he can handle that, but only when he crosses that white line do you see, is he ready for that or is he not ready for that. But I think when clubs take players from Sheffield United, they know what they're getting as people, and if you can trust someone off the pitch, then there's every chance that they'll do the business for you on the pitch, because you know what you're going to get. It's
quite a refreshing attitude, and it strikes me that it's also now being led from the top by the England manager, for whom it's important that his players are grounded, are humble, don't get carried away, behave properly, which has not always been associated with footballers. I think just a few bad apples, as there are in every job, can sort of affect the branding of everybody. So I feel a bit sorry for the general reputation that footballers have got. But clearly Gareth Southgate shares what you're talking about.
I think what people are doing now is they're realising talent's not enough. I think for too long people have thought, well, if he's talented it'll be all right, it doesn't matter what he's doing, when really it's everything. It's your brand, it's your reputation, it's your word, and you can't get away from that. And I think with the money in the game now, it's even harder. The publicity around it, the scrutiny that players are under, they have to be squeaky clean. And if you do get it wrong, then the players' earning power or his sponsorship deals, it can't be undone sometimes. But it's just the right thing. Like when you represent Sheffield United, you're expected to be a certain way, whether that's representing under-9s or representing our first team, and that goes right from, like I said before, from the chairman through to the manager, through to myself and our staff.
Role models are important, but there's a fine line, isn't there? Because we were all young once, even me, you know, and there's a fine line between having a good time and knowing when to switch off from having a good time. And it's not easy for a 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old to learn that, is it?
No,
really?
We try
without
and,
misadventure.
Yeah, we try and educate them, but you want the kids to retain a bit of what they are as well. You don't want robots. You want people that work hard, but also enjoy their profession and enjoy their time away as well. And it's just getting that balance right. And I think if you try and educate people enough and you set the standards, then more times than not you'll be all right. There'll always be the odd occasion where someone steps out of line or someone makes a misjudgment, but as long as it's not intentional and it isn't too big a sort of discrepancy, then people have to understand that we all learn from making mistakes. We're not people aren't robots. People don't come out and intend to do things wrong. They make mistakes, and part of them becoming better is learning from that and being allowed to learn from it. And that's, I do feel for the you've got to be careful, because people are out there saying these kids are earning vast sums of money and they should do this and should do that. Still someone's kid. They're still 17, 18, 19 years old. They're just not allowed to make the mistakes that your average 18, 19, 20-year-old can make. Right. Because no one knows, do they?
Years ago, nobody would have known, but now with social media, you can't step out of line and there's a picture going viral before you know it. So clearly it's
mad, isn't it?
It's a massive deterrent. I mean, Harry Maguire and Kyle Walker, both defenders, but real footballing defenders, and we'll talk about their developments in a moment. Am I the only one, when I watch England and the approach of Gareth Southgate, the pressing, wanting to be positive, wanting to get it forward quickly if he can, there's a somewhat similarity with the way that Chris Wilder and the Sheffield United first team play, albeit that England haven't created the opportunities that maybe they should have so far.
I think it's the modern game as well. I think what frustrates me sometimes is people have this stigma of Sheffield United playing a certain way, because historically possibly that's how we did play, but we, when I say we, at first team level last season, we dominated possession in most games. We created more chances than the opposition in most games. We were more expansive than most teams in most games. So Chris and Al and his staff, they're very good, and they are modern coaches and they're forward thinking, and the traits you've pulled out there of the England side of pressing and playing forward and interchange, that's what the top teams are doing. So if you want to get at that top table and you want to produce players for that top level, then you can only do it by trying to emulate it and replicate it.
There seems to be a dating of the Spain way, which worked so brilliantly for a number of years, of just simply keeping possession and knocking it around.
But it works for Spain though, doesn't it? It's not worked this time round, but they didn't actually lose a game in this tournament.
No.
But and if they'd have gone all the way to the final, which they were capable of, everyone would be saying tiki-taka is the way, and good football is good football, and if everyone played the same way, it'd be boring.
It wouldn't it just? Do you take your lead in the way that your age group teams play from the way the first team play at Sheffield United, or do you just simply look at a batch of kids and think, what's the best way to play with them? What do you do? That's
a great question. So when Chris came in, we sat down and said, like, what do you want to see coming through? What of characters and traits do our teams, individuals and positions need to have? And he clarified that along with Nilly, and then we went about, right, we play with a back three now, wing backs have got to do this. So first and foremost, we want to produce good footballers that are comfortable in possession and that have a high work ethic. Then it's a case of, well, what position is he going to suit best long term, and then fine-tuning their strengths, their weaknesses, and making sure that eventually they're capable of playing for the manager. And but one thing I would say, going right back to Ron and Kevin Fogg, through from Pembo to Nick Cox and now myself, we've always tried to play at academy level. We possibly haven't always had the best players, or we didn't always have the best system, but there's always been a desire to play progressive football through the thirds, because that's your best way of producing top players. So you see with Harry now, he's comfortable on the ball, Kyle's comfortable on the ball, Brooksy that's just gone. There's 10 years there, there's 12 years between one regime and another, but there's similarities throughout, and I don't think you can have that if one year you're boshing it and then the next year you're trying to play. And we've always tried to play, make people comfortable on the ball, give them that comfort, but make sure it's the Sheffield United way, what our fans expect of high work ethic. But
while you've got a turnover of managers, a high turnover, it's difficult to get a Sheffield United. And it's coming now towards an identifiable, I hate the word brand, but it is now.
I said brand earlier.
We're both going to take a fine for that. It's 1 pint less. I'm allowing myself to drink tonight. Right. But we know what we mean by that. And you at the academy, you've been manager for 2 years.
Well, the thing with Chris is it's quite clear how he wants to play, isn't it? And what was refreshing for us is it wasn't dissimilar. What we were doing prior to Chris coming in wasn't dissimilar. It just, he took us on a level, because we now got absolutely clarity from start to finish of a kid's journey, what the end game under Chris Wilder looks like. So we've tapped into that, but we were already on that line anyway. But what you're saying, Alan, is right. We had different styles under different managers, and the turnover was very quickly that you look at it and go, bloody hell, like, what are we trying to produce for you? So in the end, all you can come back to is what I said before. You just try and produce good players that come through regardless of who the manager is, because they're good players. But if you've got the journey nailed down and the end game nailed down, and you've got relationships built up between myself, Chris, Nilly, our heads of coaching, Del Geary, then you've got every chance of making success happen more regular.
There's a very, very good management structure at Sheffield United at all levels. You seem to just gel. We'll talk about England's game with Sweden. I know you've got a little bit of slight Swedish background, very slight from earlier in.
Don't ask me to speak any.
I was going to. All right, but in your career, your varied career, you've also played cricket. But I'd just like to ask you about Harry Maguire and your early memories of him at Shirecliffe.
Yeah, so what's Harry now? 24?
Something like that.
24. So I've been coaching 10 years now. So I stopped playing at 21. I look a lot older than 31, but that is my age. So I was very fortunate that Ron Reid and Kevin Fogg, who were my youth team coaches when I was coming through the system, they realised my injuries and my misfortune, if you like, and they were brilliant with me. They put an arm around me and they brought me straight in. So there was very little time between me retiring and starting coaching at the academy. So when I first came in, Harry would have been under 15, under 16, and my memories of him were he was technically excellent. So I think people see Harry as this big, lumbering Sheffield lad that he can't possibly deal with the ball, he can't possibly bring it out from the back, but that was always his strengths. So what you see now is how he always excelled. The bits that needed put into Harry, which various first-team managers did, Ron would have touched on, Pembo definitely worked on him with when he played in the Youth Cup final, was his defending. Now, he is a good defender.
Isn't he? He was a defender, but that's the bit that you had to work on.
So it was that desire to defend, that positioning, that you don't see him lose a header now, but he wasn't always that dominant in the air for such a big lad. So I think it was just bringing it home to him a little bit of, this is your X factor, but you need to make sure the bread and butter's in place. It's got to be
the first time for years that England have had a footballing centre-back like him.
Well, to be fair, I think they've got two in the back three.
Well,
John Stones. No, John Stones. John Stones is an outstanding footballer. Possibly the criticism of all three might be that they're not worried about him really in possession. It's if we're under sustained periods of attack, they've defended well thus far, and I don't want to tempt fate, but...
That's another story. We've got 10 seconds to the break, but the good news is we've got 24 minutes in part two when James Gregg will join us rounding up all the sport. Do hope you can rejoin us. See you then in 5.